what I'm going to do is make some comments on some of the issues that I think are absolutely crucial for the United States, and particularly in 2012. This is a crucial election. Now, my wife says to me, I haven't seen you very much on Fox or on national television. We've gotten a few blurbs on MSNBC and a few of the major stations, but no in-depth coverage. The chances for that are slim for one big reason. President Obama and candidate Governor Romney have tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars. And they are the big advertisers. In fact, this is about as early as I remember presidential election ads running this early. It's just mid-June, and they're already running in Virginia. They're running in a number of other states. And the national media tends to focus on those that advertise the most with them. And that's just the nature of the beast. But I tell you one thing that could help us significantly, and I know many in this room have already signed the petition. If we get on the ballot in Virginia and a number of other states, and we're working hard, we're on the ballot in 17 states. We've got persons working right now in Arkansas, Iowa, Kentucky, New York. That's going to be a tough one to get on. In Louisiana, Alabama, and Washington State. We're already on in Oregon, Utah, Nevada, Colorado. So we're on in a number of states. We're on in the swing states like Ohio, Florida, Michigan, Missouri. But we've got to get on in a number of other states. And Virginia is the crucial state. We need 10,000 signatures across Virginia, 400 per congressional district, to be on the ballot in Virginia. And to those of you that have signed, thank you very much. You're getting us close to a 10,000 signature registered voter requirement in Virginia. And if you haven't signed a petition, but would like to sign a petition, please do so tonight. We've got till August, but what we need to do is in the first part of July, turn in the petitions, because they'll start checking them then. Some of the signatures won't be valid. Some people think they're registered and may not be registered, and their signature won't count. And sometimes you get someone to sign that they may be underage and not registered. So we need to get more than 10,000. But we can turn them in as soon as we get 10,000, and they'll start checking. And we want to do that by certainly mid-July, so they'll have an opportunity to check some. And we're going to keep on getting signatures and keep turning them in. As you may recall, several of the Republican primary candidates did not get 10,000 valid signatures. I think a couple got 10,000 signatures, but they turned out not to be valid. Only Ron Paul and Mitt Romney got the required number that were valid in Virginia. And that's the reason they were the only two on the ballot. Same requirement for me and anyone else. On the ballot line, we would be listed under the independent column, because when you get on by petition, that's the way you're listed in Virginia. Big difference between me, Governor Romney, President Obama. I'm not taking PAC donations, and I'm limiting the individual donations to $200 per person. I can tell you that would make a president with those restrictions more grassroots than probably any other president in the 20th century. And we're not taking federal matching money. Some of the other third parties are scrambling to get a certain number of donations in each state so that they can get federal taxpayer dollars to help their campaign. Look, we've got a deficit of over $1 trillion. We should be giving $0 to any federal presidential campaign. Very simple. Just eliminate any federal matching money. And I'd like to see the Democrats and Republicans, because I don't know whether Obama and Romney are going to take federal matching money or not. Last time McCain did, I'm not sure whether Obama did or not. But we can save some money right there. And that's my position. Let's not have federal taxpayer dollars going into the presidential elections. On the jobs and the economy, another big area of difference. I read a headline in the New York Times. More young Americans out of high school are also out of work. New York Times, June 6th this year. And what did President Obama do last week? Said, basically, didn't call it that, but that's exactly what it is. Amnesty for those that came into the country illegally, at least for 2 years, and you get a work permit. That's taking jobs from U.S. citizens. If I'm elected president, I'm going to rescind immediately his executive order allowing for that short-term, a 2-year amnesty. But legal immigration is an adverse impact on our economy. And you say, how is that? This past year, under the Obama administration, 1.2 million green cards were issued. About 2/3 of those were to work-age persons. And the green card means that you can get any job you want in the United States. Some of the visas, like the H-2A, are work-specific. You can pick tobacco, or pick apples, or pick peaches, something like that, but you can't do construction work. You can't do any other type of work. But the green card is not like that. Last year, 1.2 million. And you say, well, I wonder what it was like under President Bush. Wasn't any difference. Under the Bush administration, for the past several years, it's been about 1.2 million green cards issued. Now, some are for fiancé visas. Those I don't have a problem with. Or if it is someone that can do a job that no one else can do, and they come to this country and are able to provide work for others. But I advocate, unlike Obama and unlike Romney, a moratorium with those rare exceptions that I named on green card issuances. The unemployment rate in this country is between 8 and 9%. It went up last time by 1/10 of a point. Why do you bring in all these persons from other countries to the United States and give them a green card when unemployment is between 8 and 9%? Now, I can't read the mind of President Obama, and I can't read the minds of those in the Republican leadership. But let me tell you what my suspicions are. President Obama and the Democratic leadership wants more persons in this country from third world countries. And that is where most of the illegal immigration comes from and most of the legal immigration comes from. Why? The green card is the path to citizenship. And when they get to be citizens, how are they going to vote? They're not going to vote overwhelmingly, in my opinion. They're not going to vote for rural values of Craig County, they're going to vote Democratic. And they come, many, from countries that are of a socialist bent. And that culture and value comes in. And people saying, well, we're drifting towards the road of socialism. You bet we are. But if you don't change immigration, you're not going to change that drift. And what will Governor Romney do? He's not going to do anything. And I'll tell you why. He's just like Obama. Maybe a different marginally at the edges. And I'll tell you why he's not going to do anything. A lot of the big funders of the Republican Party want low wages. And the way you keep wages low is bring in more people, bring in more green carders, drive wages down. Unemployment will be up. It's not a big demand for labor now. Why? That's because the big wheels behind the Republican Party and those in the Democratic Party have their avenues. And their avenue is for the Democrats, bring more in here that's going to vote Democratic so we can be in power forever. And the Republicans, the big money backers for them, want wages low. I'll have to send a message, though, to the big money backers. If they think long range, the constant influx of third world persons into this country is going to enhance their money, they better wake up. There could be a tide rolling when the third worlders take over and just roll over them. And where are they going to go? I don't think they're going to go to Russia. I don't think they're going to go to China. I don't think they're going to go to Africa. I don't think they're going to go to the Middle East. And then it might dawn on them, what have we done? But when they're at the gates, it's too late. Those people need to be thinking about tomorrow instead of thinking about the pocketbook today. So I am not sympathetic with the monetary leaders behind the Republican Party, nor with the philosophy of the Democratic Party. And if you want that situation to change, don't vote for either of them. But hey, if you like it the way it is now, vote for Obama. Vote for Romney. You won't get too much difference, particularly on that issue. But with me, you'll get a whale of a difference. I think jobs should go first to United States citizens, and I don't apologize for that. It's time to put the citizens first instead of put them at the back of the bus. Obama's amnesty for all those between 16 and 35. There's no way you can enforce that. All they're going to do is fill out a sheet of paper and say they were here before they were 16 and I'm under 35. They might can enforce the 35 thing. But to say how long they're here, that's a huge problem in any amnesty. Say we'll only let people stay if they've been here 10 years. They're going to fill out the paper and say they were here 10 years. And I can tell you what so many of the illegals say right now. Don't worry. Just get to the United States and stay a few years. You'll never have to go home. And that's exactly the mindset of so many that have come into the country illegally. And that costs our economy. It is a huge adverse impact on the deficit. One of the advocates, and I'm taking this from an advocate for the undocumented. That's the fancy name for illegal. 64,000 illegals graduated from public high schools in this country this year. That's their figures, not mine, but I can tell you what that costs the average United States taxpayer. All of the taxpayers that pay Craig County property taxes, that pay Virginia taxes, sales tax and income taxes, or you pay federal taxes, it costs you $640 million just for 1 year. If you added that over 10 years, and they say that's 6.4 billion to the taxpayer citizens of the United States of America. If we want reform from 2012 forward, we must totally stop illegal immigration. If we do that, the economy in this country will be enhanced. If we reduce legal immigration, the economy in this country will be enhanced. Now, there are other things we can do. I'm not a supporter of Obamacare. We could repeal that. That would help small businesses in hiring people. But we need to address the influx of persons that are jacking up the unemployment rate and driving down wages. You're not going to have economy and prosperity in this country unless you take these steps. And it's not politically correct to talk about it. They call you all kinds of things when you talk about it. And I'll tell you what, talking about it probably makes you less likely that you're going to be on ABC, NBC, or CBS. They don't want to hear it. It'll scare them to death. If this message starts going out through the public, they're going to awake. And they're going to take a look at the Democrats, and they're going to take a look at the Republicans and say, it's time to get rid of Tweedledum and Tweedledee. Let's have somebody that's going to stand up for the United States citizens first. That's my goal. That's the reason my brochure and my literature says citizenship matters.
That's right. Yeah.
How do you stop illegal immigration? I was the first to sponsor the defense bill in the U.S. House of Representatives. Correctly done, that would help some. But there are other things that we need to do. Simple things. End automatic birthright citizenship. Come into the United States illegally, have a kid, the kid's an automatic citizen, the instant it's born, gets Medicaid, yep. Food stamps, yep. Public housing if they need it, yep. And public assistance. And who's paying for that? The taxpayers of the United States that have been in this country. The illegals not paying for it, they just got here. And yet, will Romney and Obama even address this issue? Their head is in the sands. They don't want to tell you what's happening. We might make a voter somewhere mad, and we can't afford to do that. I know when Speaker Gingrich was asked a question by a federal employee in one of the presidential debates, were they going to get to keep their job? Basically, he hummed and hawed and said yes. Well, let me tell you, if I'm elected president, not all of the federal bureaucracy will have a job. And I can tell you one thing, the czars that's enshrouded President Obama, they're going to be on the street. When I had to go take Catherine to the first grade at Fairmont, I had to get her birth certificate and take it up there to prove her age. Do you think they ask for a birth certificate if you are from a foreign nation? No, that would be trampling on constitutional rights, is what they say. But I can tell you what, if I'm elected president, I would want every child going to school to either produce a birth certificate, a naturalization certificate, or a visa paper saying that you were validly in the United States. If you don't produce that, then you don't get in public school, and you don't cost, just the senior illegals cost the taxpayers $640 million a year. That's not popular to do. I can tell you, the Republicans, you're not going to hear them talk about it. Have you heard Romney even mention that? Of course not. Have you heard Obama mention it? Of course not. We've got to be PC. And the same thing should go for Medicaid, food stamps, public housing. They don't require the production of those documents. Now they'll tell you, I love it when the director of social services at home said, if you're illegally in the country, you can't get food stamps. But if you're not enforcing it right, they don't know, because they're not going to ask for those documents. If you ask for those documents, the magnets to come here illegally will shrink. Why not go to the United States, get a great public education at the taxpayer's expense? But if you adopt it, simply what I said, now they'll say, well, there's some Supreme Court case, just like they'll say on no anchor babies. But we had a bill that prevented that. We got 100 sponsors when I was in the U.S. House. Nathan Deal's bill on the anchor baby situation. Couldn't get enough to pass it. Now Congress is scared to death. They don't want to talk about this issue. I love it. The Republicans come around and say, we're all for ending regulations. And we're for balancing the budget 10 years down the road. They don't want to tell you how they're going to do it now. I hate to say it, but that's just the way it is. I was up there trying to just get them to cut foreign aid. Didn't do it. I thought Clinton had a huge foreign aid bill. But Bush came along and trumped him going away. Then Obama came along and the sky was the limit. It's time to start thinking about America first. And not being afraid to say that you're for U.S. citizens and America first. But let me jump just a minute to legal immigration. Moratorium on green cards. We need it. No diversity visas. That's 50,000 persons per year that come into the United States, a lot from the Middle East, Asia and Africa, to increase, quote, diversity in this country, end quote. Why bring in? They get green cards too. Bring them on in. And you wonder why some of your neighbors in Craig County have a tough time finding a job. I suggest you look at immigration policy. Nobody else is going to tell you this. If I got into debates at the national level, we'd be talking about this. And my prediction is Romney and Obama, the sweat would be popping out on their forehead and saying, where do I go now? Because they don't want to tell you. They're not going to tell you. They want bloc votes to be with them. The only bloc vote I want is the vote of the citizens of the United States of America. No chain migration. We have that now. You get in nieces, nephews, brothers and sisters. That needs to be shrunk. Immediate family only. And restore sponsorship. 40 years ago, if you came to the United States, you had to have a sponsor. And if you got sick and you had to have medical treatment, you couldn't pay for it, who paid for it? The sponsor paid for it. If you got in a tough situation and didn't have food, who had to pay for it? The sponsor. But you know, Obama's aunt for sure, and I don't know about his uncle, but the aunt said, well, the United States is a Christian nation and the taxpayers should pay for my public housing, according to a newspaper article. I'll say no. If you want appropriate immigration law, Barack Obama should be paying for it out of his pocket and not the taxpayers of the United States. First of all, shouldn't be let in when you're here illegally. But anyway, the judge ruled in her favor. But if we are unwilling to take steps like this, you're not going to get the budget balanced. And let me say this, I am not one of those that's an attacker of Medicare and Social Security. What is owed the most money by the public debt? What, Terry?
Social Security. Social Security.
It's not China. Social Security is owed 2.5 times what China's owed. And I have to say, We need to focus on that and let people know we need to have Social Security and Medicare total, separate, and apart from the general fund. When employers filling out their tax returns, they need to wire transfer one fund to the general fund, which is your income tax withheld. And if for the funds that goes to Social Security and Medicare, it needs to be a true trust fund and not let Congress. I love it when Gingrich and Clinton come on television and tell you to balance the budget with the BBA. Yeah, they balanced it by continuing to raid Social Security and Medicare. General fund money, it was not balanced then, and I did not vote for the BBA. The BBA was predicated upon chopping Medicare, which cuts never came back. Which the cuts they were going to make to Medicare providers never happened because the Congress they voted against them. And I joined in on that because I knew it was in my view, it was a fraud when it was first created. And if you take the Republican plan to balance the budget, they want to chop Medicare A. Medicare A is your hospital bill. If you go into a hospital, most of your bills are going to be paid for. But if you adopt the Paul Ryan plan, down the road, what's going to happen? Medicare funding will go to help pay the premiums for an insurance policy. It will not, it'll be whatever the insurance company says will pay. Big difference between that and Medicare. So I don't agree with the Romney Ryan plan. And I don't agree with the Obama plan. The Obama plan is to chop Medicare to fund his Obamacare. And he wants Obamacare because it appeals primarily to Hispanic voters. The National Journal did a poll, 42% of Hispanics weren't insured, but they will be insured. If Obamacare stays on the books, we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. I don't know what the court's going to rule on. So I am not for the Obama plan. I'm not for the Ryan plan. I support traditional Social Security for everybody that is paid into it. Last thing I want to mention as a difference, and then we're going to open it up for questions because I've talked to you about 25 minutes now. I want to stop. Is term limits. If you want change in Congress, you've got to have term limits. And I was up there 12 years. The scenario runs like this. You get elected. The Republican leadership, the Democratic leadership comes and tells the new members the same thing. Even the old members. First thing you got to start doing, buddy, is raise money. Because ever who has the most money, most likely is going to win the election. That's fact of life. You're able to buy more ads, hire more people, and flood the mailboxes, flood the radio, and flood the TV. And every election I raised my opponent, I won. I lost in 2012 when some outside help really poured in. 22 of 2008 poured in for my opponent. I made some people real mad. Some of those people that I talked about, they didn't like my immigration stand. They didn't like my stand on several different things. But I got to the point, I said, I'm going to tell it like it is, whether I get reelected or not. It's going to make some people mad. Because the way you get reelected is you don't talk about tough issues. They're generalities. Lower taxes, but not be too specific. Less regulation, that's on one side. Other side is, well, we got to have more investment. If you don't have term limits, it's not going to change in Washington. You've got to have term limits. Term limits would set limits a person would know that you're only going to be up here a certain length of time. It would greatly help, in my view. And the term limits have to be across the board. Otherwise, if you have persons, and I voted for every term limit, well, I'll say every, might have been one or two I didn't, that I didn't think were good term limits. When I was in Congress, I supported the term limits. We never got the 2/3 vote to get it out of the House. But term limits would de-emphasize so much raising money for the next election. Because a lot of members of Congress, I mean, I was part of this too. You spend so much time worrying about the next fundraiser, you're not thinking about the long-range future of the United States. And the leadership encourages every member, raise more money, raise more money, raise more money. And if you want a campaign that's different, this campaign's different. No PACs, no union PACs from the Dems, no corporate PACs from the Repubs. Individuals, I won't be getting an invite to George Clooney's home where it'll raise $15 million. The most you can give me is $200. And if anybody wants to make a donation between $200 and $200, I'll gladly take it. But you're going to keep on getting the same thing, and you're going to keep on having the same problems if you don't make fundamental change in this country. And term limits will do it. If I'm elected president, I've already said I'm not serving but one term. Probably be better if a president just served one term.
6 years.
We could do 6 years. That's it. Otherwise, I can tell you, Obama and Bush before Obama, they were looking at what moves do I make that's going to help me best in the election. Not whether I can work out something and get us on the right track. It's how I can best help myself to get reelected. Term limits would greatly help that. They have term limits in Congress. I'm not wedded to a specific time. I think maybe 12 years max for House and Senate. The most you can be in federal elective office is 12 years. And that's it. If you serve 6 in the House, you could get 1 term in the U.S. Senate. Some may say lower. I'm comfortable with a lower limit. But if you don't have term limits, you're not going to get the change that is needed for the House and the Senate to focus on the future of the country instead of the next election. And having said that, I'll stop right now and just throw it open for a few questions if anyone has any. We've got 7:48. We'll do about 12 minutes of question and answers if you have any.
Who's Tom Perriello working for now, Virgil?
I don't know.
George Soros.
Okay, well, he was working for him before he ran against me, so we went back to it. Okay. Now, I say that, but George Soros funded these nonprofits, and the nonprofits gave him a job. And that's a huge proliferation of nonprofits that are really more agenda-driven, in my view, than helping people. I think a nonprofit should be the American Cancer Society, the Easter Seals, ALS Foundation, SPCA, Historical Society, things like that.
Could you make a comment on Agenda 21?
Yeah, I'm very much opposed to Agenda 21. Agenda 21 is a UN concoction, if you will, that would greatly regulate private property ownership. And I don't know if, I talked about the funding by the big wheels behind the Republican Party. I don't know if they really understand. They think Agenda 21, they can control that. If that's anything like that runs wild, they won't control it. And if you let that go wild, you'll have a UN treaty greatly restricting firearm ownership. I was proud to be co-chair of the Second Amendment caucus in Congress. Always had A's ratings from the NRA and Gun Owners of America. We've got to keep our right to keep and bear arms. That's fundamental to our freedoms. And if Agenda 21 and globalism sweeps the world, you're going to see some harsh restrictions, and then government will totally control you.
How do you feel about the line of thinking that you'll split the tickets, and take votes away from the Republican Party by the people who are adamant to defeat Obama, and that they will hurt you. How do you feel about that?
That's the Republican line. They can't argue with me on the issues. Let's sit here and we'll talk about immigration. We'll talk about balancing the budget. We'll talk about right to life. We'll talk about Romney's, what he did in Massachusetts, being the first governor to tell his bureaucracy to issue marriage license to homosexuals. We'll get up here and we'll talk about the issues. They don't want to do that. The easiest way to get rid of me or anyone else is to say, he's going to hurt me. Well, let me tell you, if I'm on the ticket in Virginia, I'm going to get a lot of votes from old line Democrats. They're going to vote for me, and they'll never vote a Republican ticket. And I hope I do get some votes from Republicans. But the issue with Romney's biggest issue is, vote for me, I'm not Obama. He doesn't want the election. He doesn't want to delve into any of these issues. Is he going to talk about anchor babies and how that's going to sink the United States? Is he going to talk about moratorium on green cards? No, he's not for that. They are not going to talk about the issues that will change America for the better and restore some fundamental opportunities to United States citizens. He wants to get there, and the best way to get there is just go around the country saying, I'm not Obama, I'm not Obama. That's his line. That's all they're going to say. Talk about these issues. Let's look at what are the fundamental problems facing this country. Yes, sir.
How would you respond if you got a phone call and he said, this is Mitt. Hey, Virgil, you want to come be my vice president? Because I think you can get some grassroots support for me. What would you say to him?
No. He's not right on the issues. I mean, that's my perception.
Are you on the short list, Virgil?
Not on the short list.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
You're talking about term limits for the senators, the representatives, and the president. What about judges appointed for life? Like here in Virginia and the federal Supreme Court.
I always favored the thing that similar to what Senator Byrd favored. That was that judges would have a certain term, 6 years, 8 years, and then they'd have to be subject to a vote. You wouldn't have an election. It would just be a referendum on that judge, and if the judge didn't get a certain percentage, in Missouri, I believe it's 40%, some states 50%. If you don't get that, you're out. But I supported that concept when I was in the General Assembly. Yes, sir.
Some people are saying the support for gay rights and the recent amnesty for illegal immigrants are pandering to those groups, and there's a possibility that Obama is going to thinking about legalizing marijuana to pander to the youth vote. Should there be a limit on executive order, the ability for the president to make these sweeping changes?
Well, I would say that certainly with the amnesty bill, that exceeds executive order authority. I mean, you really got to question a broad scope of executive orders. Do some of them just exceed the Constitution? And I think a close analysis would say yes to that.
So it's not a rule change, it's illegal already, most likely.
Right. And the marijuana laws, most of those are state. I mean, for him to issue an executive order on that, then the executive order is going to cancel out whatever the Virginia rule is, or whatever the West Virginia rule is. Okay. Yes, Mr. Colonel.
What's the prospect of getting a balanced budget amendment through Congress?
A balanced budget amendment through Congress. When I was there, it passed the House several times. I would say, don't hold me to this, I'd say 3 or 4 times. Passed the House, and then missed by 1 or 2 votes in the Senate. I voted for it and co-sponsored it.
So if we need to get a few more favorable people in the Senate in the election.
That's right. Now, but you know what? The balanced budget amendment that they had this time didn't pass in the House. Now, I think it was changed a little bit from the way it was when I was there, and I'm not sure of the exact changes.
Do you think it would really work, or would all those schemers, lawyers in Congress figure a way to get around it?
They'd be figuring out, try to get around it next day. But now, would they be successful? It would certainly add a weapon to the arsenal of supporters for a balanced budget. I think really the best thing that you could do is have term limits. And if they said, well, you know what, to balance the budget, we're going to have to put a moratorium on food stamps. I'm going to vote that way, because we got to do something. And now you could go down the list. Department of Agriculture, we won't be able to fund that at 100%. Department of Education, we might have to cut out No Child Left Behind. I didn't vote for it before. And I would be happy to sign a bill totally repealing No Child Left Behind.
EPA needs to go.
What?
EPA needs to go.
EPA? Yeah, just you could go down the list. Tough decisions, but with term limits, it would enhance the backbones of nearly every member of Congress and the U.S. Senate. I think you can safely say that.
How do you feel about 17th Amendment?
17th Amendment is, that's for the direct election. Yeah, I personally am not out front to do away with the 17th Amendment. Now, the term limits, I think, is better than that. Let me tell you, share with you a bit of history, and being here in the Craig County Courthouse and looking at all the historical pictures. As Judge J.A. Lee, my great uncle was in the House of Delegates in 1875, and Judge Lee served 1 term in the Virginia House of Delegates, and my great uncle was in there with him. And then I look at a number of generals over there on the wall, and all you judges around here. It's always great. You get kind of flooded with history when you come to the Craig County Courthouse, and I like that. Don't get me wrong, I like that very much. It's not antiseptic like some of the more modern courthouses. But here's what happened in Virginia in the early 1890s. General Fitz Lee, who was the nephew of Robert E. Lee, was governor of Virginia. Won a big popular vote victory in 1885. Then, I believe it was John Barber, died in office, and it was time then, all the U.S. senators then were elected by the state legislatures. There was a railroad lawyer named Thomas Staples Martin was running against Governor Fitzhugh Lee, Robert E. Lee's nephew. Well, I can tell you that popular feeling across Virginia was overwhelmingly for Governor Lee to be the next U.S. Senator from Virginia. But Governor Lee didn't get it. Thomas Staples Martin, with all the railroad money behind him, just poured it in to the General Assembly elections and scooped it right away from Judge Lee. I mean, not Judge Lee, General Fitzhugh Lee. And that really was an impetus for some in Virginia to say, well, let's do away with the legislature picking the U.S. senators. So that's a factor in my thought on it, having looked at that situation, because Fitz Lee really got robbed of being a U.S. senator. And of course, he went on, he served in the Spanish-American War with distinction. But the popular sentiment, and I would say probably a majority of the General Assembly, if it hadn't have been so lobbied so hard and so much money poured in by the railroads, that they would have preferred General Lee too to be the U.S. Senator. So it would make, doing away with the 17th Amendment would make the U.S. Senate more responsive to the states. But I think the better approach is for term limits.